Happy Sabbath! Such a wonderful day of rest. I would like to share some fantastic comments on the Sabbath from Abraham Joshua Heschel. Then I have a very important call and message, and at the end we will debunk a rather adult-themed anti-Ellen White article. First, let's open with a word of prayer. Dear Father in heaven, thank you for blessing us all with safety, life, health, breath. Be with all the people out there that are suffering for numbers of reasons, but most of all, sin. Lord, may we be shining lights, may we be witnesses, and now that we see the end is truly upon us, may we fearlessly tell people what is coming, so that they might be warned. And Lord, in that day, may we not have to face any of our friends asking us why we didn't tell them. Thank you for giving us the truth and the good news, and may we always share it with everyone we meet. Amen. Abraham Joshua Heschel is a wonderful Jewish writer, and I wanted to quote what he has to say about the Sabbath because it's so beautifully and simply presented. He says, "To gain control of the world of space is certainly one of our tasks. The danger begins when in gaining power in the realm of space, we forfeit all aspirations in the realm of time. There is a realm of time where the goal is not to have but to be, not to own but to give, not to control but to share, not to subdue, but to be in accord. Life goes wrong when the control of space, the acquisition of things of space, becomes our sole concern. Gallantly, ceaselessly, quietly, man must fight for inner liberty, to remain independent of the enslavement of the material world. Inner liberty depends upon being exempt from the domination of things as well as from domination of people. There are many who have acquired a high degree of political and social liberty, but only very few are not enslaved to things. This is our constant problem: how to live with people and remain free, how to live with things and remain independent, and I could add, how to keep the Sabbath when no one else does. The Sabbath is the day on which we learn the art of surpassing civilization. Shabbat comes with its own holiness. We enter not simply a day but an atmosphere. My father cites the Zohar. The Sabbath is the name of God. We are within the Sabbath rather than the Sabbath being within us. For my father, the question is how to perceive that holiness, not how much to observe, but how to observe. Strict adherence to the laws regulating Sabbath observance doesn't suffice. The goal is creating the Sabbath as a foretaste of paradise. The Sabbath is a metaphor for paradise and a testimony to God's presence. In our prayers, we anticipate a heavenly messianic era that will be a Sabbath, and each Shabbat prepares us for that experience. Unless one learns how to relish the taste of Sabbath, one will be unable to enjoy the taste of eternity in the world to come. It was on the seventh day that God gave the world a soul, and the world's survival depends upon the holiness of the seventh day. The task becomes how to convert time into eternity, how to fill our time with spirit. 6 days a week, we wrestle with the world, wringing profit from the earth. On the Sabbath, we especially care for the seed of eternity planted in the soul. The world has our hands, but our soul belongs to someone else. Today, we'll be discussing some unwritten rules for Christian living. Now, the word rule generally has a bad connotation, and honestly, rules are generally only in place, to curb sin and give people parking tickets. In the Old Testament, there's a veritable plethora of rules for the Israelites, and I have to thank my dad for giving me the phrase veritable plethora. I've always loved it. But they had to be given rules to stop worshiping other idols, coveting each other's things, then beginning that dealing with witchcraft, idolatry, other such things. Sometimes in my head I think of feeding fish. Like some flakes, they stay on the surface, but most of the flakes float down. But as the flakes float down, they're caught up by the fish. I think of the surface tension as loving God, following His rules, and floating above sin. When you sink down, rules, like the fish, are there to catch you. Sometimes you sink deeper, sometimes you sink shallower, but either way, the rules have to catch you. And the wages of sin is death. If you stay floating on the surface, although yes, the fish still eat those flakes too, but rules still exist for you. But if you focus on loving the Lord, you will naturally fall in harmony with them. You won't be constantly wondering whether you've broken a rule or not, and therefore you will feel like you're floating above them because you're in harmony with them. When you love the Lord, your mind is always seeking to do things that are in harmony with Him. Sometimes, I'll even question things whether or not they're in harmony with Him, just to double check. And, if you look at all the religions of the world, you'll find a lot of Eastern religions, New Age, and philosophy-based religions, and most of all atheists, asking what the meaning of life is. It's considered the great question. Why are we here? What's the point of everything? And evolution gives us an unprovable past and a hopeless future. But I hope you're gathered here because you do believe the Bible and the Bible only. The first angel's message tells us in Revelation 14:7, fear God and give Him glory, because the hour of His judgment has come. Worship Him who made the heavens, the earth, the sea, and the springs of water. As we've covered before, it's a wonderful reference to creation and a call to return to worship our Lord in His Sabbath day. In Matthew 22:37, Jesus replied to the Pharisee, asking the greatest commandment of them all. He said, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and all your mind. This is the meaning of life. We are to witness for Him. We are to spread the good news. We are to keep ourselves in a physical state that serves Him the best, and we are to love Him. Now, mind you, right now in society, they try to say, oh, well, if you're a Christian, you need to love everybody like Jesus. Be like Jesus. He loved everybody. Look, they're trying to tell you to love gay people for the fact they're gay. And they keep missing the point where He loves the sinner but hates the sin. We don't need to love the fact people are gay. We should love the person as God loves them, but at the same time, just as kindly and gently as Jesus did. We are here to provide correction, whether someone wants to hear it or not. Of course, remembering to do it in the most loving way is Jesus' way. And that's hard for us sometimes. But, these are the fundamental rules for how you live your life and the decisions you make. And sometimes, the Bible, it lays out a lot of very specific rules, some that were done away with in the old laws of the Israelites, the ceremonial laws. But, they act like the Bible should have a rule for every single thing you should or shouldn't do. They're looking for that exact word, and if it's not in there, then it isn't wrong to do. But as my mother used to tell me, I can't think of a rule for everything you think of to do. There has to be a moral code in the Bible, a loving God code. Take speeding in your car, for example. And sometimes, I will question whether or not something's wrong. You have to be careful and not become an extremist thinking just because your brain questioned it means it's wrong. If there's something wrong in it, your brain will be able to pick it out. But there's things where you really need to go to God, and it's between you and God. Because not everything that comes to my mind, I'm like, no, that's absolutely appropriate. The Lord's okay with that. There's no problem with my decision. I realized I'm just checking in with the Lord because I love Him and I don't want to offend Him. But make sure that just because it comes to your mind, you aren't instantly, you end up living some kind of crazy monk life away from everybody. Like my mom, she always told me, can't think of everything, you do. And there's a code, and I didn't figure out that code very well as a kid. But I was thinking about, speeding in your car. Is that a moral sin? Technically it's a law of the land, and God told us to, not disobey authorities. But God's law is above that, and if everyone around you is going 80 miles an hour, it's truly unsafe to go 50 or 55. And yes, I live in Miami, so yes, this applies more to me than someone who lives, say, in the middle of Ohio. But we know flowing with traffic is safer, and keeping yourself safe preserves yourself to further witness for Christ. Your entire goal is to keep yourself as healthy as possible so you can be as effective as possible in your witnessing. This is why I believe something like riding a motorcycle actually is a sin, or at very best frowned upon by God. At very least, I see lots of motorcyclists who have Jesus logos all over, but I can't help notice their cavalier attitude about God's protection for them riding the most dangerous form of transportation by choice, and mostly for entertainment. If you truly love the Lord, the word entertainment should instantly raise a red flag for you as well. It reminds me of Luke 4:12, where Jesus replied to Satan in the desert with, "It is said, thou shalt not tempt the Lord thy God." Driving with traffic is one thing, but driving too fast or too slow or on a motorcycle can be tempting fate. I will be speaking a little bit more on health and life preservation, but what is the message we are supposed to be sharing? Now, I've spoken of the three angels' message before, but let's read again Revelations 14, 6-13. Then I saw another angel flying in the midst, and he had the eternal gospel to proclaim to those who live on the earth, to every nation, tribe, language, and people. He said in a loud voice, "Fear God, and give him glory, because the hour of his judgment is come. Worship him who made the heavens, the earth, the sea, and the springs of water." Second angel followed and said, "Fallen, fallen is Babylon the Great, which made all the nations drink the maddening wine of her adulteries." A third angel followed them and said in a loud voice, "If anyone worships the beast and its image and receives its mark on their forehead or in their hand, they too will drink the wine of God's wrath, which has been poured full strength into the cup. They will be tormented with burning sulfur in the presence of the holy angels and of the Lamb, and the smoke of their torment will rise forever and ever. There will be no rest day or night for those who worship the beast and its image, or for anyone who receives the mark of its name." This calls for patient endurance on the part of the people of God who keep his commands and remain faithful to Jesus. Then I heard a voice from heaven say, "Write this: Blessed are the dead who die in the Lord from now on. Yes, says the Spirit, they will rest from their labor, for their deeds will follow them." This is such a beautiful promise, and it shows our deeds follow us, so what we do and who we do worship truly matters. You also notice this: "Blessed are the dead who die in the Lord. They will rest from their labor, for their deeds will follow them." That totally shoots down the idea of going straight to heaven or hell when you die. It says here, those who are dead, who die, so they are dead, they died in the Lord, so they're safe in him, because as we've talked about before, death is the end of your judgment of life. There will be those who live to the end and are translated into the air without seeing death, which would be wonderful, but either way, we should be ready to give our lives for him. This really just makes such a good point, and the thought of resting in the Lord, just waiting for his coming, is, the way the Bible puts it, is something that needs to be studied. You need to understand that people don't go to heaven or straight to hell when they die. The Pope just recently was calling for us, saying it's most important now that we pray for the dead. For what? For why? There's everything in the Bible is vehemently against something like that. And what's it going to do? It doesn't make any difference. They're dead. They're in the ground. If they lived a good life, then when he comes back, they'll go to heaven. If they don't, then they will have to die the eternal death and the second death. So just watch out for that. It needs to be studied, memorized. You need to know that no matter how real it may seem, dead ones are not going to come back. If they do, it is just Satan and his angels. And it's going to be one of the biggest tricks in the end time. And we all need to be very much on guard and on watch for that. Study his word so we know the truth. But there's such a beautiful promise in that verse, and that our deeds follow us, that we're to worship God. And there's great wickedness on the earth that we need to repent of. Not just obvious wickedness like fornication and idolatry, but wickedness of worshiping the Lord on the wrong day, Sunday. Worshiping the laws of man and not God. It is one of the many subtle deceptions of Satan to get people to break one of the 10 commandments. As James says in chapter 2, verse 10, "For whosoever shall keep the whole law, and yet offend in one point, he is guilty of all." And Satan knows that you will be lost because of that one small issue. Lots of modern preachers try to say God's full of love, he won't trip you up on one small issue. Yet what happened when Eve broke one single request of God? What happened to Lot's wife when she broke one single request of God? What happened to Jonah when he broke one single request of God? What happened to Moses when he broke one single request of God? What happened to Uzzah when he broke one single request of God? This does not mean God isn't love. Just like a parent telling their child not to run in the street because they'll get hit and killed doesn't mean they don't love them. Parents are to be respected because they save you as a child from death. And as children of God, we are relying on Jesus as our mediator to God to save us from eternal death. And if he says to keep the Sabbath, we keep the Sabbath. If we want to be saved. But he's given us the power of choice. We also, like parents, need to be shouting the life-saving message to others. If you're a true Bible follower, you know the end is coming very soon. Had an epiphany earlier, and I have to share this, so please give your full attention. Although there are people in the world who are doomsayers, we actually know the doom that is coming. We can do far more than holding a sign saying the end is near. If 1 year ago you started telling everybody, hey, there's a great societal change coming, watch out very soon, things are going to change as we know it, how much more would people be listening to you now that COVID's hit? We shouldn't try to specifically predict the future, but we know there are going to be great disasters coming. Every time someone mentions any kind of natural disaster, we need to say, wait and prepare, it's going to get far worse than this, We need to be telling people very soon, buying and selling will be controlled. Already in many countries, large banknotes have been discontinued in preparation of discontinuing cash entirely. This is happening very fast, and although it sounds unbelievable right now, it's coming very rapidly, and we need to be warning people of this, because then when it happens, we'll have that much more credibility to spread the word in our finite human wisdom. It may seem that God is taking his time, but that is because it is time where we must endure scoffing and ridicule for his name's sake. That's just more blessings to store in heaven. You tell someone that's something that sounds completely far-fetched, ridiculous, and they kind of think you're a little bit crazy for now. But when that near impossible ridiculous thing like control of buying and selling, and that happens, you're all of a sudden going to seem like someone who knows something. You're going to want to come to you. And the Lord tells us to have patience. Like I said, don't do date prediction. Don't try to tell people, oh, this is going to blow up on May 18th of 2022, or it's about what's coming. And then when people see those events, we're missing out. This COVID was a huge opportunity. If we had been out there telling people, look, things are changing fast, it's going to get crazy, businesses are going to be controlled soon. When COVID hit, they would have looked at you like a prophet. Very soon those scoffers will be squelched, and they will be trembling in fear and begging us to tell them what we know. Speak the prophecies now, boldly to people. You will be justified very quickly. You may look like a doomsday prophet, but you are a true hope's day prophet, with a message of salvation, and false prophets will quickly fall by the wayside. Tell people there's earthquakes coming. Tell people that property will become valueless. Let them know that their religious liberties will be encroached on. Tell them. When all the world is shaking and groaning in its final labor pains, they will see you shining with a calmness and a surety that is unsurpassed. They will be dying to know what the truth is. But how can you stand firm if you don't have the faith of Jesus in you now? How can you let your light shine if you don't start trimming your wick now? If you don't speak the scriptures and the prophecies, being as a peculiar person in the sight of the worldly onlookers now? As Noah looked crazy in his time, how will they know you have the true message so you can lead people to Christ in the latter rain? Please hear my call. Stand firmly and boldly. We are in a time where we can speak the prophetic predictions, and we will soon be justified. If you didn't know the answer when we started, now what would you say the true meaning of life is? We need to make sure we are in good health and take care of ourselves so we may be most effective in spreading the message. I want to speak about health and the Adventist health message. There is more than enough proof the Adventist standard of living is exemplary. Of course, there are individuals who make different choices, but Adventist majority shows a level of health that surpasses most places in the world. Although we spoke of blue laws last time, blue zones are entirely different and are places where people live longest around the world. Loma Linda is the Adventist health epicenter and is one of the major blue zones in the world.
At age 100, Benita Williber still has a healthy mind, body, and spirit.
I've given myself to the Lord, and I've left myself in His hands, and I have trust, and I have been very, very well taken care of.
She's not alone. There's an unusually high concentration of centenarians in her hometown of Loma Linda, California. It's one of only 5 so-called blue zones worldwide, areas where people live the longest. The others are Okinawa, Japan, Korea, Greece, Sardinia, Italy, and Nicoya, Costa Rica. Loma Linda is an hour east of Los Angeles. About 250,000 people live here. The reason they're so healthy is because most of them are Seventh-day Adventists. On average, they live 10 years longer than most Americans. Dr. Larry Beeson has researched this phenomena for the last 50 years.
Adventists have approximately the same proportion of people who die of cancer, heart disease, or stroke, but the age that they get diagnosed is much later.
They strongly adhere to the belief of respecting the human body as a temple of the Holy Spirit. That means no alcohol, no tobacco, and following a plant-based diet.
In Christianity, we have the Holy Scriptures. What God said from the beginning, you should eat. He gave us the nuts and the grains and the herbs that He placed in the earth. And He said, you will do better if you subsist on that type of thing.
What has your diet been throughout your life?
Vegetables. My sister liked fruit. Well, I do too, but vegetables had priority, and I like them raw.
Many Adventists, like Benita, are total vegetarians. Others will eat a little dairy, while some occasionally consume fish, and there are those who eat small amounts of poultry and beef. These choices lead to different health outcomes.
The more flesh foods you eat, the more Alzheimer's, the more heart disease, the more cancer, the earlier the death occurs. Where going the other direction, as people move toward the removing flesh food from the diet, there tends to be a delay in the onset of the diseases.
Diet isn't the only factor in these longer lives. Seventh-day Adventists strictly observe the Sabbath. Every Saturday, they rest to recuperate from the week and recharge for the one ahead. Also, to spend time with friends, family, and God. Stuart Hardy, who pastors one of the world's largest congregations, says resting on the Sabbath includes abstaining from electronics.
Any of those things that kind of take you back into work, we try and avoid those things. Now, it's not like it's a rule, but when you think about it, if there's anything that you're involved in during the week, if you go back to that, then you're not really taking a break from it.
I feel that rest is one of the most important things in aging. That if you rest, then you can get up and gallop.
Medical research confirms stress kills.
Science has always kind of had some kind of tension with religion, particularly in contemporary society. So it's great to be able to read something in the scriptures that suggests what we should do, and then science is not only affirming it, but even giving us more specific understanding of why it benefits us so much.
Exercise is also a priority. Throughout her life, Benita was extremely active. Now she only has the strength to walk, which she does every day.
It is subsiding, and that's the way God had intended for people to be, and so I accept that too, even though I don't like it.
Adventists are able to stick to their healthy lifestyle because they're surrounded by others living the same way.
My mother used to keep us in the straight and narrow way by saying, now be careful with the company you keep.
So look to the Seventh-day Adventists who live an average of 10 years longer than the rest of us. They exercise and observe the Sabbath. They avoid alcohol, tobacco, and meat, all within a social network that reinforces that behavior. Lori Johnson, CBN News.
Here is what the official secular Blue Zone's website has to say about Adventists. Loma Linda, California. A group of Americans living 10 years longer. The Seventh-day Adventist Church in this sunny pocket of Southern California was founded in the 1840s. The church flourished through the 20th century, and so did its members who view health as central to their faith. Today, a community of about 9,000 Adventists in the Loma Linda area are the core of America's Blue Zone region. They live as much as a decade longer than the rest of us, and much of their longevity can be attributed to vegetarianism and regular exercise. Plus, Adventists don't smoke or drink alcohol. How can you live like the American Longevity All-Stars? Try these tactics practiced in Loma Linda to live measurably longer. Well, let me stop for a second and interject that it is the only Blue Zone in the U.S. and blue zones are measured around the world, and we happened as a country to get a blue zone when compared with the rest of the world, and that blue zone's in Loma Linda. So this isn't a comparison with America. This is a worldwide comparison, and there's only a handful of blue zones in the entire world. Back to the article. Find a sanctuary in time. A weekly break from the rigors of daily life, the 24-hour Sabbath provides a time to focus on family, God, camaraderie, and nature. Adventists claim this relieves their stress, strengthens their social networks, and provides consistent exercise. Maintain a healthy body mass index. Adventists with healthy BMIs, meaning they have an appropriate weight for their heights, who keep active and eat meat sparingly, if at all, have lower blood pressure, lower blood cholesterol, and less cardiovascular disease than heavier Americans with higher BMIs. Get regular, modest exercise. The Adventist Health Survey, AHS, shows that you don't need to be a marathoner to maximize your life expectancy. Getting regular, low-intensity exercise like daily walks appear to help reduce your chance of having heart disease and certain cancers. Spend time with like-minded friends. Adventists tend to spend time with lots of other Adventists. They find well-being by sharing each other's values and supporting each other's habits. Snack on nuts. Adventists who consume nuts at least 5 times a week have about half the risk of heart disease and live about 2 years longer than those who don't. At least 4 major studies have confirmed that eating nuts has an impact on health and life expectancy. Give something back. Like many faiths, the Seventh-day Adventist Church encourages and provides opportunities for its members to volunteer. People like centenarian Marge Jetton stay active, find a sense of purpose, and stave off depression by focusing on helping others. Eat meat in moderation. Many Adventists follow a vegetarian diet, and the AHS shows that consuming fruits and vegetables and whole grains seems to be protective against a wide variety of cancers. For those who prefer to eat some meat, Adventists recommend small portions served as a side dish rather than as the main meal. Eat an early, light dinner. Eat breakfast like a king, lunch like a prince, and dinner like a pauper. American nutritionist Adele Davis is said to have recommended, an attitude also reflected in Adventist practices, a light dinner early in the evening avoids flooding the body with calories during the inactive parts of the day. It seems to promote better sleep and a lower body mass index. Put more plants in your diet. Support of a biblical diet of grains, fruits, nuts, and vegetables, Adventists cite Genesis 1:29. And God said, Behold, I have given you every herb-bearing seed which is upon the face of all the earth, and every tree in which is the fruit of a tree yielding seed, to you it shall be for meat. The Adventists encourage a well-balanced diet including nuts, fruits, and legumes, low in sugar, salt, and refined grains. Studies have shown non-smoking Adventists who ate 2 or more servings of fruit per day had about 70% fewer lung cancers than non-smokers who ate fruit once or twice a week. Adventists who ate legumes, such as peas and beans 3 times a week, had a 30 to 40% reduction in colon cancer. Adventist women who consumed tomatoes at least 3 or 4 times a week reduced their chances of getting ovarian cancer by 70% over those who ate tomatoes less often. Eating a lot of tomatoes also seemed to have an effect on reducing prostate cancer for men. A new study has found that adherents to this way of life have the nation's lowest rates of heart disease and diabetes and very low rates of obesity. Drink plenty of water. The AHS suggests that men who drank 5 or 6 daily glasses of water had a substantial reduction in the risk of a fatal heart attack, 60 to 70% compared to those who drank considerably less. This is an excerpt from the Blue Zone's book, Lessons for Living Longer from the People Who've Lived the Longest by Dan Buettner, 2008. So here's a few other studies. 20-year-old Americans can expect to live 6.6 years longer if they attend religious services at least once a week. A study from the Duke University Medical Center concluded that even occasional private prayer and Bible study help people live healthier and longer lives. The University of Texas study found that life expectancy rose when the number of church services attended increased. Those who attend every week had a life expectancy of 82 years, dropped to 79 years for those who attended less than once a week, and for non-attendees it dropped to about 75 years. Abstinence from smoking, which most Christian churches advocate, will add 3 years to your lifespan. We know from the Bible, Daniel lived on fruits, nuts, and grains, and the Bible likes to use the word pulse, and I like that word because pulse is life. Paul says in Romans 14:21, "It is good neither to eat flesh, nor to drink wine, nor anything whereby thy brother stumbleth, or is offended, or is made weak." Now there's a people who say, a little bit of meat or a little bit of alcohol won't hurt, and maybe they don't take the Bible seriously, but now that we have science, we can see the Bible was right all along, because the World Cancer Research Fund says no amount of alcohol, sausage, or bacon is safe, according to a new global blueprint on how to beat cancer. Even small amounts of processed meats and booze increase the risk of a host of cancers outlined in World Cancer Research Fund's guidelines updated every decade. Doctors now have also found that a piece of bacon takes more time off your life than smoking a cigarette. God has provided so many wonderful, nourishing foods for us to eat in such a variety of colors and flavors. We are so blessed. Can't you just see how Satan uses lunatic, violent vegans to turn people off to vegan and vegetarian diets? Here's an excerpt from an article showing an example of that. British rocker Morrissey forced Madison Square Garden to ban meat and fish when he gave a concert there last year, says there is no difference between eating animals and pedophilia. He said, and once actually likened the use of animals for food to the Holocaust. His self-righteousness inflamed Yvette D'Entremont, an LA-based analytical chemist who debunks many nutritional myths, especially those which claim just about every food to be dangerous, on her SciBabe blog. D'Entremont, a former vegan herself, says the regime can have health benefits for some people, but I come from a background of Polish Jews. To wave your arms and compare not being vegan to the Holocaust? Well, she trailed off in disgust. A little extreme. Yeah, what a way to turn people off. And similarly, people who don't think certain vaccinations are good are labeled as crazy anti-vaxxers. On a side note, they're now discussing paying people who refuse to take the COVID vaccine and finding out the price to take it, which to me is a fulfilling a Bible prophecy, since they want to use health tracking to decide if you could shop or patron businesses or not, but we'll speak about that more in another video. Mainly, I will not be taking the vaccine because it contains swine, and if I'm not going to eat a pig, I'm definitely not going to inject a pig into my bloodstream. Soon, we will be the crazy Sabbath keepers. We just spoke about bacon, but what's so bad about pig? Well, let's see. This poor gentleman accidentally undercooked a pork chop and will never be the same again. This man had seizures and worms throughout his body. People may say, oh, well, you just have to cook it properly. But once again, God said not to eat it at all. Do you think something that risks taking time off your life, affecting your health in such a way, helps you witness for Christ? It may not seem like a big deal to you, but all you're saying is love for Christ and spreading his message isn't a big deal either, and it's worth whatever it is, your pleasure, eating whatever food you want is worth the risk of damaging your ability to witness for him. It's this fundamental principle of serving the Lord that we should pray naturally controls all of our actions and decisions. For instance, you might want to open a restaurant, but are you going to serve pork? Do you think God will hold you morally responsible for serving a damaging food to one of his children? What about alcohol? Even the state deems a restaurant that overserves is responsible for the consequences of the actions of someone who drives after drinking at their establishment. Obviously, I really do not need to speak further on the detrimental effects of alcohol. I just quickly want to point out the lie that wine has some kind of amazing antioxidants. Grape juice has far more antioxidants, so yeah, forget about that line from the winery corporations. Also, a quick search will also reveal Jesus never drank wine. He drank grape juice and spoke against drinking fermented wine. He would have done nothing to defile the body, as he states intoxicating drink does. People say at the wedding feast he turned water into wine, but whether it was wine or grape juice or not, it never says he drank it. The Bible speaks very much against drunkenness. But let's look at the end result of things. Alcohol causes far more problems than it has ever solved, if it has ever solved any other than removing adhesive residue and powering afterburners, which, yeah, that's a cool use for it, but mind you, we're speaking of humans here. So, what about caffeine? Well, it's a stimulant that hurts the body and causes nerve damage in extreme cases, but most of all, it's highly addictive. In a previous video, I mentioned a bumper sticker that said, through coffee, anything is possible. A blasphemous twist on through God, anything is possible. How many people think of coffee first thing in the morning? It's their God. How many people use not having coffee as an excuse for their bad attitudes? Folks, this is serious business, and these things need to be avoided. I hear people say, oh, but coffee shops are great places to meet for Bible studies. Yeah, Well, so is nature parks or anywhere else stimulants aren't sold. Go get some tacos or something. And back to the restaurant analogy, there's also the consideration of not being open Friday sundown to Sabbath sundown. But business ownership aside, employment is the same thing. Will a job require me to work on Sabbath? Will it require me to possibly lie, like some marketing and sales jobs? Many times we see we only have one path and can't see the path God has for us, and therefore we choose the wrong one because we haven't been walking closely with Him. Possibly the greatest power we have as humans is to deny God the ability to exercise His power in our lives. We have a power greater than God, and that is the power to not allow His goodness, graciousness, and forgiveness to work in our lives. Not to say we are greater than God, because God in His graciousness gave us the power of choice. But ultimately, once again, there is no power in us that isn't through Him. He literally gave us power over His power through choice. Don't break God's heart. Now, when you look at the end results of things, and there are many more examples, hopefully you can see how something benefits the true meaning of life or detracts from it, and most importantly, we need to make sure it benefits others and doesn't detract from them or cause them to stumble. Paul's point in Romans about not eating meat or drinking alcohol was about not causing others to stumble. So maybe you're a good Christian, you just have one beer every now and then. But what if you have someone over to your house who's a recovering alcoholic and he sees there's one beer in the fridge? And maybe he knows in the Bible, and you profess to be a Christian, that you're not supposed to drink. What's he going to think? Do you want to become a stumbling block to someone else? I'm just trying to give a basic set of rules, like a mathematic function or formula to plug your choices and decisions into. A lot of people feel like this may be too extreme, but loving God needs to be an extreme thing, period. It doesn't accept lukewarm. We need to be burning, skin-melting, scalding hot for Him. Even He said that to be all the way against Him would be better than to serve Him half-heartedly. Revelation 3:16. So then, because thou art lukewarm, and neither cold nor hot, I will spew thee out of my mouth. And Matthew 7:22 says, Many will say to me in that day, Lord, Lord, have we not prophesied in thy name, and in thy name have cast out devils, and in thy name done many wonderful works? Folks, it's time to spread His message like wildfire, and we will be justified and recognized as having a true faith. The faith of Jesus and the patience of the saints. Now to debunk 2 points from nonegw.com. In this first article, they are claiming a meatless diet stunts the growth of children. But I am living proof that is not so, as I was raised vegetarian and always was top of my class and one of the fastest runners, just as Daniel and his friends were noticeably smarter and healthier than everyone else. Children these days are being raised in record numbers to be vegan and even gluten-free. There isn't an epidemic of children with stunted growth. There may be some cases where extreme dieting guidelines enforced by the parents are unhealthy, but even Jesus would tell you diet extremism isn't pleasing to Him. Eating fruits, nuts, and grains is His original plan, and is not extreme. In the Garden of Eden, there was definitely not a provision for animals to be eaten or killed, for food. Yes, Jesus ate fish, and, maybe we'll get into that at another time. But mind you that it is a different time and situation He was in. Nowadays, with all the pollution and disease, it is probably best to stick with plant foods. The only time eating meat breaks a moral law, I feel, is when it is unclean. However, meats these days are not slaughtered in accordance with the Bible. There were rules for how meat was supposed to be drained of the blood, and so even in supposedly clean meats these days, there's still always blood present. What it comes down to is loving the Lord and being as healthy as possible to spread His good news as effectively as possible. And now that they've proven white meat is just as unhealthy as red meat, why eat any of it at all? Lots of things are pleasing to the taste, pleasing to the eye, and that's because Satan makes them seem that way. Satan knows he can't get us by being bad and disgusting all the time. This article even further reads on to try to prove that other Christians are just as healthy as Adventists. But if that's the case, why isn't Salt Lake City, Utah a blue zone? Why isn't Vatican City a blue zone? Their arguments fall apart as fast as they're put together. This brings me to our final topic that I really don't want to dwell on too much, but it is an adult topic and I feel it's important. It's about self-pleasure, and we will be referring to it from now on as the idol of self-love. On this page, they argue that Ellen White was completely wrong about a multitude of symptoms caused by the worship of the idol of self-love. Negative health effects she lists include brain weakened, headache, insanity, lung disease, memory loss, neuralgia, nerve pain, and premature death. They try to paint her in a light of being crazy and unscientific, and they quote research saying worshiping the idol of self-love is normal and healthy. But mind you, we live in an age of hypersexuality. It would be extremely unpopular to say that the idol of self-love is wrong or unhealthy. The fact Ellen White says it just gives them another point to attack her on, since that is their goal. But let's see what honest science has to say. Neuroscience speaks. How using porn destroys your willpower. Neuroscience now knows that willpower is a function of the prefrontal lobe of the brain. Scientific studies have also confirmed that using porn and over actually reshapes these areas of the brain, literally eroding our willpower and our moral compass. Neuroscientists call it hyperfrontality. Hypofrontality is a state in which there's decreased blood flow to the prefrontal lobes of the brain. Hypofrontality is observed in schizophrenia patients and is also observed in all manners of addictions. What is hypofrontality? In his ebook, The Porn Circuit, Sam Black explains what hypofrontality is for the porn viewer. Compulsiveness is a good descriptor of hypofrontality. Many porn users feel focused on getting to porn and worshiping the idol of self-love, even when a big part of them is saying, don't do this. Even when negative consequences seem imminent, impulse control is too weak to battle the cravings. The porn-addicted brain has trouble thinking logically. When impulses and desires come from the brain, instead of being moderated, the brain feels these desires as compelling needs. The prefrontal region is supposed to be able to weigh consequences and situations and judiciously shut down cravings. But hypofrontality means the addict's ability to do this is impaired. To the addict, when the craving for porn surfaces, their whole body gears up for action. As unhindered hormones are released and neurotransmitters fire, the craving consumes them. The heart begins to race, blood pressure rises, and the addict is consumed by a single thought. Just one more time. What causes hypofrontality? Compared to other creatures on Earth, human beings have a very well-developed prefrontal region. When our prefrontal lobes are working properly, we have executive control of the processes going on in our brains. It is where we do our abstract thinking, making goals, solve problems, regulate behavior, and where we suppress emotions, impulses, and urges. But the more one masturbates to porn, the more dopamine is released in the brain. Eventually, dopamine receptors and signals in the brain fatigue, leaving the viewer wanting more but unable to reach a level of satisfaction. The viewer becomes numb to things once considered pleasurable. To escape this desensitization, people, and men especially, expand their pornographic taste to more and more novel stimuli. Black writes, this leads again to more fatigue, desensitization, impacts of prefrontal cortex. As the dopamine receptors decline in the brain, so do the amount of neural cells in the prefrontal lobes. So, have you ever heard someone say, oh, hey, yeah, I need to go worship the idol of self-love because it's an essential function for my health and totally improves my self-control. It has nothing to do with lust or inappropriate thoughts or images. Yeah, you haven't. The studies saying that it's okay to do really are just trying to give you a band-aid to put over a deeper heart problem, because God has written in our hearts that it is wrong to do a long time ago. Matthew 5:28 says, but I say to you that everyone who looks at a woman with lustful intent has already committed adultery with her in his heart. Mark 7:20-23 also states, and he said, what comes out of a person is what defiles him. For within, out of the heart of man, come evil thoughts, sexual immorality, theft, murder, adultery, coveting, wickedness, deceit, sensuality, envy, slander, pride, foolishness. All of these evil things come from within, and they defile a person. So, after reading that article, does it not seem like that would be somewhat defiling? And this is science saying it, not the Bible. This isn't Ellen White. This is science. Although she mentioned a few extreme things, yes, decreasing your frontal lobe will lead to a myriad of health problems, maybe not directly related to it, but in their argument trying to say that she's just crazy and none of these things are connected, unfortunately, they are the crazy ones who are just simply trying to slander someone because they've seen the truth, but they refuse to see it. Most likely because what she says requires a change in lifestyle, and as we've spoken about before, a lot of times people don't want anything to do with God because it would require a change of lifestyle. They just don't want to give it up. So it says in the article, these desires get harder and harder to control and lead to promiscuity, which, as you can see in these articles, it leads to smoking, drugs, and more. Yeah, Ellen White really isn't wrong, although, maybe in and of itself, that action doesn't lead directly to it, but that lifestyle in excess definitely leads to health problems. Let's look at some statistics. There were 42 billion visits to the popular website called Pornhub this year, which breaks down to 115 million per day. 39 billion searches were entered, often bringing up one of the 6.83 million new video uploads in 2019. Every 9 minutes, an entire day's worth of content is uploaded, and they say, we're viewing it, we're making it, and porn is not going anywhere, and you better believe it as long as Satan's around. You can't help but wonder if this will be one of the websites that helps trigger the great shift back to spirituality. The false revival, anyway. There's a Conquer series that is fantastic, and this is from their website. You can see a phone number on the screen, and I highly recommend ordering the DVDs as I have a copy of them, and they are fantastic. Here's some statistics for them. Statistics reveal that the increase in the amount and reach of pornography cannot be ignored. But it is not just a problem affecting men. Women, teenagers, and children are also being caught in the web of pornography at alarming rates. Many Christians may assume that the church is immune. They see the smiling faces of the people who attend their church. Certainly such godly folks could not be viewing pornography. But many studies and reports have come out over the last several years that show quite a disturbing picture. Not only has pornography invaded churches, but in many cases, the statistics show that Christians and even church pastors engage in viewing porn at almost the same rates as the secular population. What the numbers show. The research studies, primarily by the Barna Group and Covenant Eyes, reveal that initial exposure to porn begins in childhood and progresses. Access to porn is increasingly easy due to the wide variety of formats now available, such as printed material, the internet, DVDs, television, and more. So let's look at some data to see the scope and effects of porn in society and on the church. Now, let me mention also really quick, Ted Bundy blamed pornographic material for what led him to commit the horrors he committed, because as the previous article said, they keep needing more and more and more to get the same rush. And unfortunately, he went way too far. In any bit at all is too far, but you get what I'm saying. So here's statistics. Over 40 million Americans are regular visitors to porn sites. The average visit lasts 6 minutes and 29 seconds. There are around 42 million porn websites, which total around 370 million pages of porn. The porn industry's annual revenue is more than the NFL, NBA, and Major League Baseball combined. It is also more than the combined revenues of ABC, CBS, and NBC. 40% of families in the United States reported that pornography is a problem in their home. That's 47%, almost half. Pornography use increases the marital infidelity rate by more than 300%. 11 is the average age the child is first exposed to porn, and 94% of children will see porn by the age of 14. 56% of American divorces involve one party having an obsessive interest in pornographic websites. 70% of Christian youth pastors report that they have had at least one teen come to them for help in dealing with pornography in the past 12 months. 68% of church-going men and over 50% of pastors that were surveyed, over half of the pastors view porn on a regular basis. Of young Christian adults 18 to 24 years old, 76% actively search for porn. 59% of pastors said that married men seek their help for porn use. 33% of women aged 25 and under search for porn at least once per month. Only 13% of self-identified Christian women say they've never watched porn. 13%. 87% of Christian women have watched porn. 55% of married men and 25% of married women say they watch porn at least once a month. 57% of pastors say porn addiction is the most damaging issue in their congregation, and 69% say porn has adversely impacted the church. Only 7% of pastors say their church has a program to help people struggling with pornography, yet you have 57% of pastors saying it's their worst issue, and only 7% with a way to deal with it. We've got to provide more love and support as Jesus would. Porn addiction is rampant. I've seen it in several of my coworkers. They can't work an entire shift without viewing inappropriate material at least once. And those are the people that really, they just seem to have the lowest IQs, the most health problems. I mean, there was this one guy who would just disappear 3 to 4 times in a shift. In one shift, he'd disappear out to his car. And everyone knew what he was doing, and they'd all laugh about it, but, like, that's a problem. The guy was a total moron, tons of health problems. You know, when you have no self-control, think about all that invites in from other areas. And don't even get me, I'm not even going to start listing what health problems are caused by STDs and other such things. Because obviously, when you are worshiping the idol of self-love, it is merely just the, like they say, weed is the gateway drug. It's just, it leads to much worse things. So Ellen White was definitely not wrong about any of that. You know, they, like I was saying, just had low IQs. And the thing that really got to me is I've had to tell so many coworkers, please do not send me inappropriate images. For me personally, I just don't see how people can send such crude material to another person that they, like, really don't even know. You just kind of work together a little bit. Like, you never said, oh, hey, I'd like to see some pictures of, inappropriate pictures of women. Please, sure, send me that. Like, it's just retarded, and I don't get it. And no offense, but Latins are the worst. And on breaks, you see all these Latin guys, all they do on their phone, all the Cubans get together, pull their phones out, look for chicks with big boobs and big butts, and then they just all start showing each other their phones. And it's just retarded and disgusting, and in the meantime, I like sitting off quietly on my own reading my Bible. But once again, there's the narrow path and there's the broad path. You have to tell them, don't send me stuff. It weirds me out. Like, it used to be a private thing, but now it's just openly in your face. Does any of this sound like a healthy thing for Christians to be doing? God has asked us to resist things and suffer in His name. Learning to resist this temptation builds your self-control. As you can see, this is quite a debate, but let's apply our biblical meaning of life. Is it time well spent? Did it lead others to Christ? Was it a good use of money? Or did it leave you feeling guilty and possibly cause you to objectify some of God's children? Stop touching yourself. Start warning people of His coming. And they say idle hands are the devil's workshop, but I actually once heard someone say tongue-in-cheek, idle hands go straight into the pants. And it is true. If you're working for Jesus, you have way better things to worry about. One last point is tattoos. They've proven toxins from the ink are stored in some of the body's internal organs. And therefore, if, say, the best-selling rapper of all time, Lil Wayne, if his kids ever needed a kidney transplant, he wouldn't be able to donate because of all the tattoo ink poison. And on a side note, you notice the crosses? Like, that image is entirely unholy. And wearing crosses is no message of salvation, but it's of rebellion and blasphemy. Like, in this image is awful. And this is Satan's lie. Like, just do your thing, wear a few crosses, and it's all good. Throw in a Hail Mary for good measure. I usually see tattoos and think, well, there's money they used to have. People could say there's nothing wrong with it, but once again, let's plug it into our formula. Does it honor God? Is it a good use of time and money? So I hope I brought some insight and some encouragement into your daily walk and witnessing for Christ. Thanks so much for sticking with me to the end. I know sometimes those topics can be a little awkward, but just wanted to say love and support here. You know, feel free to pause on the images, because like the one Conqueror series, there's a phone number and everything, and I will share links in the description. And much love to you all, and have a happy Sabbath.